morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening. Another Saturday. Hopefully, we can stimulate some more conversations on spiritual topics. I look forward to hearing whoever wants to come up to panel. We can share back and forth, or if there are a bunch of you, so I could actually play the third wheel and get to hear you both talking, or talking and hearing each other. And hopefully, people in chat can be inspired to share things. Again, this is about sharing spiritual stuff, hopefully. So, again, I'll go silent just for a bit. I'll post some stuff in the chat. So I've spent a couple minutes cutting and pasting some stuff into the chat. Hopefully, folks that come here and watch it either live or when it's being recorded, for future recordings, obviously they can click onto that. But once again, I'm hoping for interaction with folks, whether you want to interact through chat or interact through the panel. This is an interacting channel. So again, I'll go silent until somebody either comes on panel or chat, because it's always going to be a win-win, guys. Sound check. Morning. Sound check.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Welcome. Hey,
Okay. Sound check, check, check. 1, 2.
I can hear you clearly. I hope everybody else in chat can hear. Hopefully, Henry, you can hear. Hope well. Welcome, by the way, Judith.
Thanks. I have a delay feedback. How do I correct that?
Mute your YouTube. If you're on YouTube, mute it.
How's that?
I'm okay. I don't hear the feedback. Can you hear the feedback?
No.
Okay. So anyway, we were practicing a win-win here, Judith. Silence is always also golden. So it's another form of teaching spirituality. Would you like to share on that or something else?
It's interesting because it made me rethink my 10-day visit to Vipassana, which was a silent meditation retreat, which you also participated in afterwards.
I did actually.
And I contemplated on silence. And at the time that I did Vipassana, I wasn't uncomfortable with silence. I just couldn't seem to shut up my thoughts. And so the first 3 days, I felt the need to try to control what I was thinking, and I completely missed the whole point of meditation, which is just witness the thoughts and till you finally ease into a state of silence. Beautiful flowers. Those are morning glories.
Can you hold this for a second, Judith? We'll invite Henry in. He's just showing his garden. Hi, Henry. Hi, Henry. I muted you so that you could finish your thought there. Would you like to share, or are you just going to give us a beautiful garden view, which I love?
Oh yeah, I was mostly because I don't have really good words to say. I thought better time to show flowers than spirit talk.
Oh, by the way, Henry, if you wouldn't mind, can you put on your after the little display of the garden? Can you put your icon on after? It's kind of like a non-facial thing here. But anyway, I appreciate the garden. When you have a chance. So you were talking about Vipassana, or should we continue?
Well, silence. I didn't have an issue with silence back then because I was thinking that I had to control my thoughts to make the silence. I didn't know how to enter into silence. In spite of the fact that I was hearing the teacher tell us, just observe your thoughts. I wasn't aware of the fact that I was actually trying to control the silence, to force myself into silence. Fast forward many years, and there's times when there is silence inside and out. And I have discovered sometimes when that silence lasts maybe just a little too long, that I get an energy inside that makes me feel it's almost like an impulse, an energetic impulse. Like okay, I have to break the silence. I have to get up and do something now. It's not that I have to think something. Sometimes I have to do something, or maybe it is that I have to think something. So I find that sometimes I'm still, in spite of lifelong meditation, I still haven't mastered, I guess, that art of just being in silence. Like I have moments where I'm just there and I'm just, everything's good and I'm silent and it just is. And I don't know if that's really the right phrase to say that it's good, but it just is. Um, but yeah, even to this day, I still sometimes find that I wrestle. I wrestle, and probably with myself. So silence, I think, is a wonderful concept, but the mastery of it. Mm,
Can I put a different word in there, maybe, Judith, instead of maybe
mhm.
mastery, servitude to silence,
I'm
or the
not sure
appreciation. Go ahead.
sorry, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, I'm just playing with different words, opposed to mastery, servitude, or appreciation, or just observation of silence. Sometimes the connotation with mastery, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but sometimes when people think of mastery, it's like some sort of art form. I got to master it. It has to be my servant or it has to be my slave, opposed to just try to play both roles. If you are going to play mastery, play the servant or just appreciate it or observe it. Because isn't that what silence is when we're in those thoughts? As much as it's a struggle for me too, but I do have those glimpses of moments of silence.
I think what I've realized, which is probably why I gave up on active meditation, I find that I do better with passive meditation. Gardening, for example, is a passive meditation. There are no thoughts. The body, and maybe it's because of the way that I am wired. I have a lot of energy, and I find that if I don't ground it or expend it, that I get extremely um, I can become anxious, I can become nervous, I can become wired and tired, I can become so many things with that. I can be the result of that's the effect of, I guess. I'm at the effect of that. So I find for me, I can sit for a little while in meditation and I can be fully present. I really can be fully present. But I guess that's what I was saying about mastery. I don't live in that full presence all the time. And maybe, and I shared that about the whole meditation journey because for some reason I thought that that was the end goal. But what I'm learning about silence and the role of silence in my life is that there's a time to be present and then there's a time to be out in the world. So that's why I say I don't think I've mastered it. I don't know that I ever will. I don't know that that's my intention even.
You would have to
In the
almost go with,
beginning, I thought it was. I mean, when I first started meditating, I started meditating when I was 18. I started meditating because I had a psychiatrist tell me that I had issues and it was all in my head. And I thought, okay, well, then I'll get to know what's inside my head. And I think that's when I realized that there's a lot inside my head. And a lot of the times I don't know who and what all that is or who and what it belongs to. So I had to spend a lifetime of sorting through all that. And then in that also, there was times that, well, I don't like this thought. I don't like how this thought exhibits itself in my life. And I don't know what else to do with this thought other than try to control it, other than try to intentionally, purposefully silence it.
well,
It was a struggle for me.
yeah. It sounds like when you were talking about meditation that you kind of subsided that from a bit. Um, to me, anyway, a concept of meditation is listening. So after you've
Mhm.
gone into silence, you listen. But unfortunately, that chatter mind, the monkey mind, as some people call it, is there, and you're trying to avoid it. Sometimes that's why passive, in this case, you say doing gardening, you distract it. You distract that
Mhm.
monkey mind. So okay, it's not about it's either or. Let's go with it. I will do dishes. I will fix a car or a bike. You want to keep that monkey mind functioning, being productive. So this way, when you've practiced meditation, you're literally listening within. This is where concept of prayer, peace, and meditation comes into play. The prayer is the inquiry kind of word. People can interchange that word with something else. Peace, think about Muslims, peace be upon you, silence be upon you. Because to get into that state of meditation, listening to something that's always in silent. That's the thing. There's something that's always there. And this is where some people, when they do it, go into a sleep state, they go into that silent and stillness state. So now they don't have to actually entertain the monkey mind because it's in that state of stillness. It's a struggle for most of us because we've been conditioned. And in that conditioning, we haven't accepted the fact that there's another part of us that needs to, hear from within. So, um, Henry, if you don't mind, I don't know if you heard me when I was sharing earlier. This is more of a chit chat. If you wouldn't mind just putting on your icon, so this way, if you wanna, if you wanna
Oh
unmute,
no,
this
that's
way,
fine. I mostly was just gonna show up with flowers and not really add much dialogue, anyways. I'll just
okay,
leave. You
okay,
have a
no,
good day.
no, okay. Thanks, Henry. I appreciate that. Have a beautiful day yourself, my friend. Okay, good enough. No, it's just because this way we can focus in on hearing, with each other.
Listening.
Well,
You
hearing
got
it. There's a bit of both, Judith. There's hearing, and then there's listening. What we do with each other, we kind of hear each other. Hopefully, we're listening from within. It's kind of like when you have that thought, like, I heard what they said, but what am I listening to at that point? And it's in the silent.
No, it's a very good point because as you're speaking, I am hearing something come up which prompts me to then share. You had mentioned about giving the mind a task. It reminds me of mantra meditation, especially japa mantra meditation, where you recite a prayer over and over and over and over again. It's to give them, or even tantric meditation, when you're standing at a dot, or drishti meditation, a dot or a candle flame. You give the mind something to focus on. I get what you're saying. And for me, that is the best way for me to get into that state. Although there are times when I can literally sit on my meditation cushion and just go into meditation, no problem. But I find because I have, and maybe I'm sharing this because, again, not everybody is wired to sit on a meditation cushion and just meditate. And maybe that was the whole thing that I was trying to force myself to be, is to be this person that sits on a meditation. Like, you've been to Vipassana, it's 14 hours of silent meditation. And
But it teaches a lot of that noise that's constant. I call it noise, but distractions that's already in place. Being is just being. What we're trying to do is we're trying to do the being, opposed to just be. It's a struggle. But if I can intercede to play on a word, there's the mind and then there's the brain. For most of us, we have to get into that state of listening to the mind or beyond the mind. But for a lot of us, we have that upper brain that we're constantly feeding, hence our sensories. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Jude.
For me, like I said, in the first 3 days, I wasn't so much trying to control the mind because I was becoming aware of all the thoughts in my mind. And then I was, at that time, because then they were teaching you to try to keep your body still, right? This is why meditation, even when I'm on the mat now, or the yoga mat or the meditation mat, is very different for me. If I need to fidget and move, I do, because I'm wired that way. I'm very fidgety. I have a lot of energy, a lot of nervousness energy. Trying to force myself to sit still then became, okay, now I got to control the body. And then once I realized I can't control the body, then I thought, okay, well, then let's come back to the thoughts and try to be in this harmony with the fact that I'm all this incredible energy that I just don't know how to be with. This has been my whole lifelong struggle, which is why I ended up going into barefoot grounding and gardening and all these other different types of meditative practices, such as sourdough bread making or washing dishes or just like daily life, the chop wood, carry water. That has been my daily meditation.
If I can give you a spin, Sergio, if I can give us, I appreciate you sharing, and we'll continue with that. If I can give you a spin on the meditation, in this case, the 10-day retreat. If all of a sudden puzzles were introduced into the Vipassana retreat or a phone, it would give that monkey mind all kinds of distractions. So now, what ended up happening is when you reduce the amount of noise or distractions, now the person can say, okay, now we'll give you a little bit. You can focus on when you're eating now. Because for people, they're still kicking and screaming. What we people call meditation, doing gardening, that's to occupy the monkey brain. The meditation part, the true listening, is when you can be around all kinds of noise or distraction, and I'm focused inwards, not outwards. That's where I got from Vipassana. I said, there you are. Now I can literally focus on my body. There's where I'm feeling a lot of agitations. It was a struggle for me, Jude. And in that, I still struggle with it because I've allowed a particular aspect to master it. That's the mastery that people are talking. That's the ego. It constantly wants something to feed it. As I'm talking, I'm still feeding it. But once you're in silent, it's squirming. Give me something to do. Do some gardening. Let's run up and down. Is there a fire truck down the street? Most of us are. Go ahead, Sergio.
Oh, sorry. On that note, I know that I have made progress in that. I know I have, because I don't suffer as much from the anxiety. I don't suffer as much from the restlessness. I can be still longer. I can be in silence longer. Just laying on the floor and doing absolutely nothing, which is a form of meditation, and just listening to whatever thoughts are there. Sometimes, surprisingly, my brain's pretty empty at times. But coming back to what you were saying about distracting the mind, I don't know how it works for other people. And maybe this is why I have favored the types of meditation, the chop wood, carry water daily types of meditation that I have, is in distracting the mind because there's so many competing thoughts in the beginning. It just slows things down so that now I'm only entertaining maybe 2 or 3 thoughts, and sometimes there's a pattern going on in those 2 or 3 thoughts. Even if they're different stories, there's a similar theme or pattern, and that's why they're competing. So I've learned to say, "Okay, I'm gonna listen to you. I'm not gonna ignore or reject these other 2, but one voice at a time, one story at a time." If you've ever been in a room where, and I have, where 5 people are talking at you, it's very difficult to listen, to truly listen. It's even difficult to hear. So for me, I've taken that internally, and I'm hearing one voice at a time, and I do pattern recognition. I think we all do. What's the pattern here? And that's when I
Well,
go inward.
there's the part where you are the observer. Once you're the observer and you're genuinely listening within, you can entertain all the different voices you're hearing outside. But
I can't, not
unfortunately,
at once.
maybe not everybody could probably have that ability. I get that. But at the same time, the monkey brain, not monkey mind, the monkey brain. I don't even know how I keep saying it now. I'm offending a poor monkey. The brain itself, the upper brain, it can only take in so much. Some people can entrain themselves to expand it a little bit more, but at the same time, are they able to listen from within? To get into that state of quietness, silence is the beginning. Then you can start listening from within. There's something within all of us that's by far more superior than from without us. And this is where, when I start hearing other people, I'm hoping that I can actually be the perceiver receiver at the same moment. I'm perceiving as I'm receiving. This is where wisdom comes in. But for a lot of people, they cut it short and they got to judge it. I think that's weird. So at that point, I've just justified, I don't have to go deeper anymore. Well, then that's what's mastering that person at that point. That external voice, that judgment. The mind is there, but people aren't fully using the mind for its capability. And when I say mind, we're talking about mint, image of God kind of ideal. These are thoughts. But what we do is, it's called afterthoughts. You know, a person can read a book. I said, okay, so are you just reading it to perceive it, or are you receiving it? You know, if it was inspired to be written or spoken, therefore through inspiration, you should be able to grasp that, if that is what your role is. Again, a lot of folks, they figure just because they've quieted down the chatter and they're in meditation, oh, now you're just starting it now. You're able to listen now from within. And that comes in the form of thoughts. For some of us, some people, it might be colors. It might be a download, for example.
Good points. Two things that come to mind is that, again, I think I've made a lot of progress because I'm more at peace. And you're the only person that really can, well, other than me, you're the person that sees me the most. You can attest to that. I'm not, even my daily demeanor, how I show up every day, every morning has changed. It's, let's just say it's more inviting. I think I was less inviting of people in my surroundings because I had so much going on inside. Another thing, weird. Weird is a judgment, and yet, for me, weird is a wonderful judgment because it's still an open curiosity. I like it when things are weird. It's an invitation that I can't. This is something that I don't have an answer to right now. I know a lot of people when they say weird, they're making it like a negative connotation and it's a closed door. But for me, a lot of times weird is an open door. I'm just not ready to walk through because I'm waiting for an invitation. So I note it because I don't yet have an understanding or wisdom of it. I'm thinking, okay, this is weird, it's strange, but I'm not going to reject it, but I'm not going to walk into it yet either. Just going to note it.
True. Again, Judith, you know, this is where people, when they're in that listening state, they can read energy, for example, and they're realizing what that person's intent is or uncomfortableness. This is why some people say that person's insecure. That's why they said it was weird. Unless they can say after a little pushback, what do you say when you actually get a new concept? Well, I find that weird. That's kind of like saying it's interesting. Again, we're using an English language that has many variations of meaning. It's not a direct, this is exactly what I'm intending to say to a person. This is why some of us can pick up energetically before a person speaks. They're not comfortable. Now, we might be picking up body language first. And at that point, I said, okay, if that's weird then, or crazy, or whatever word, what wouldn't be weird? And then sometimes people will be sharing their programs. What's normal to them, because it's pattern recognition at that point. If a person starts being around other people that talk about spirituality for a constant amount of time, every other 10th word is about spirituality or implying about spirituality, that would be the norm. Think about how the energy works. Enough people start carrying around a cell phone, it becomes the norm. You're around a whole bunch of other people trying to practice a 10-day silent retreat, that becomes the norm. And something within will act accordingly. It doesn't want to put you in harm's way. Go ahead, Jude.
Yeah, I was going to say it's entrainment and resonance, really.
Yes, very much so. So being in an environment trying to do a 10-day retreat at a train station would be totally different than in a place where, they try to reduce the amount of noise there, you know what I mean? Or more nature's noise. When I say noise, I'm just talking about sound, the sound.
Well, it's interesting because you and I have had this conversation. For me, even silence is very noisy, even without the voices, the stories. There's a lot of staticky noise, and even, I would say, the vibrational sensations, which can result in a lot of staticky type noise within the conscious, within the conscious being that I am in this body. I don't find silence to be very quiet. I never have. It's like, I think we talked about this the last time I was on. It's like when I close my eyes, and yet I still see little flecks of light. There's no true darkness. So to me, there's no true noiselessness.
Well, if all of a sudden I'm not thinking, you say to me, Don, what are you thinking or feeling? And meanwhile, I'm thinking about fixing my bike, but I'm not sharing it out loud. Only because you asked. That's what I'm talking about. There's that brain that's keeping on all the to-do list, which is great. These are the things you need to do when you're stewarding this vessel. But when it comes to people saying, what I'm doing meditation, I'm like, no, you're not. It's like even when people talk about guided meditation. So you're going to be guided by the ego brain about spiritual stuff. Okay.
Well, if that's an entryway to get them in, why not?
Sure. And next thing you know, they start doing hums and ohms and all that other stuff, which you could do on your own. I've heard you talk about doing mantras. You do it enough, eventually you can embody it. Literally, your body's going to take it in. Next thing you know, you don't have to speak it out loud anymore. It's been a resonance from within. But when we're hearing other people, we're still hearing other people. If a person wants to get into that state of silence and stillness, why are you hearing other people? You know the brain's going to gravitate in that direction.
I have a proposition for that from experience. I think because sometimes it's the trigger to help you get in. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you cannot help but overhear someone because it triggers something within you, and that's what you need to meditate on, not with the person, how they've offended you or how they've hurt you or they've whatever it is that's triggered you. It's, ooh, cool, because this is my take now. Ooh, cool, I just was triggered. This is awesome. Now let me go in with that. What is this trigger all about? When did it start? Where did it start? Who did it start with? Who does this person remind me of in the past? A person, place, or thing. Who do they remind me of? What does this conversation or this statement or this word that triggered me remind me of? And now let me go into that.
This is where we had talked recently about control versus discipline. Mm-hmm. You have masters and you have disciples. Mm-hmm. Mastery is more about control. Discipline is about being a disciple. So for a lot of folks, they will feed that brain constantly, which, hey, If you're striving for balance, I'm going to do the things I need to do when I'm in the conscious state with my sensories, but I'm also going to do the stuff that a lot of us aren't even been taught or to ignore. But they want to balance it. For some people, they have to do either or. I'm going to do a lot of material stuff, and then I'm going to do a lot of spiritual stuff. For a lot of people, they ignore the spiritual stuff because their cup is so full in the material, constantly feeding it. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. Well, that was me, and on some days it still is. But I do it now more with conscious intention. I think there's a possibility that and I'm saying this about myself as someone who grew up in an environment where I had absolutely no control of anything in my environment. And then as I became a teenager, moving onward into adulthood, hence the need to control everything, even including my body and my thoughts and my feelings and yada, yada, yada. For me, mastery was the pathway. Trying to control certain things was part of the pathway to discipline, to discipleship.
Well, I'll give you a
It,
Dr.
it has it in my life. It had its place and its purpose.
I give you a Dr. Phil term. Is it working for you? It goes back to, we do speak where we're at. So control is an issue for a lot of folks. This is why the word challenging comes into mind. Where other people, if the word challenge doesn't come to mind, I'll double down on my control. And that's challenging again. Once again, it's challenging because challenging gives you something to inspire to. Control is like, oh, that's a full-time job now.
Yeah, I was going to say I love a challenge.
Yes, you do. I know that, and I hear that in other people. They like challenges. We wouldn't have strived as a race, a human aspect, if it wasn't for challenges. Now, the ones that we're struggling with are the ones that are trying to control what they've actually obtained. I'm like, that's a fruitless effort. You know, they might get some gains out of it, but it's going to be at the expense of the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. But again, I think it's still part of the journey because I know I've gone through that.
Mm-hmm.
Over the 60 years that I've been alive, I know that I've gone through that at times in my life.
Oh, Sophia, if you want to know, this is my love of my life. This is Judith. She's sharing. It's a lady that I've met in years past, named Sophia. She wants to come up and share with you. I'll gladly hear you both.
Hello, Sophia.
Yeah, again, Judith, it's one of those things where when people get into that state of meditation, a lot of things unfolds. Oh, that's what I've been doing. Yes, that's what you've been doing. You've been struggling with yourself. Well, I thought God was going to come and save me. I'm like, I've been here. Whatever that is to that person's interpretation.
I've not yet met a human being that has not suffered at the hands of their own self.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
At the mind of their own self.
The ones that stay, have some popcorn ready.
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, you can, and I do know people, and even in my own life, there was times that I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to go through all this struggle. I do want to escape. It's just too effing hard right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had my moments. Sometimes those moments have lasted years, but I've had my moments of escape because a person can only handle so much.
And this is a fun statement I'm going to say. We escape from doing. In exchange, we ignore from being. See, this is where people miss the one to avoid the other. So opposed to, okay, you don't want to do anymore for a bit. Okay, all the power to you. But at the same time, don't forget, be aware of the being part, who we truly are. The doing part, it's fun to play. I use the word play. It could be a task, it could be duty, it could be responsibility, whatever word you want to fill in at that point. But to escape, and this is where you hear people, I want to escape. I want to be a workaholic, into sex, into, what else can I use in there? Food addictions, whatever. You become addicted to something eventually. Because we're trying to escape what? The ongoing, I gotta eat, I gotta pee, I gotta drink, I gotta do all these tasks. But then we ignore the being part, the ongoing program. Go ahead, Sergio.
Do you know what I learned about doing, Dom? I learned that you cannot not do. Even when you are being, you have to go and do something to be. You have to go sit down or lie down. You're still doing, even if it's passive.
Hmm.
There's still a sense of doing. So, you and I have had conversations about addiction and what I learned early because I grew up in a highly addictive various substance family. I learned that growing up, I would use a substance and then I would quit, but I'd pick up another substance. So, for example, I gave up cigarette smoking and just just like that, at the snap of the finger, I quit smoking and I took up long distance running. And then snap of the finger, I quit that and I did something else. When I was when I gave up, I guess, sitting on the mat because it there was still this restlessness energy. I thought, well, if this isn't working, and this is where I think it pays to be malleable and to not force yourself into one discipline. I took up serious hiking. Like you saw me, I'd go out 8 to 10 hours a day and I would hike.
Hmm.
In that, it helped me to dispel all that excess energy so that I could, I didn't even do it. It's just the mind naturally settled. It was the byproduct of, I wasn't exhausted because I have so much energy, but I was quiet enough now. I had expended enough energy now that it was no different than sitting on a meditation mat and just listening.
I think, Jude, this is where when I've heard people talk about free energy, it's harness energy. So we are energy beings. So the doing that you're talking about is inevitable for us. Change is constant. We're always moving in some way, whether it's in the energy of thoughts, emotions, physical. So when a person can actually harness that energy and maybe even redirect it if need be, so this is why you have extra energy. You're built that way, Jude. So for you to go for a long hike, that's normal for you. In my interpretation of what I think normal is, I could
For me,
probably go ahead, Jude.
yeah, no, you're right. For me, yes.
Yes, no different. You can spend hours preparing and doing things for bread and all that kind of stuff. I could say the same thing, even the stuff that I enjoy doing. As children, we were probably better adapted. I'm not saying all children, I hope that all of them have the opportunity to harness a lot of that energy and play. And then when we get older, it's kind of like the term, you do the same thing for different results. That becomes a form of insanity because as children, we just like to play. And the ones that get to explore that, they realize it's always shifting. That's why, again, the word control is actually, it's kind of illusional to a certain point because it'll be like a quick, how long can I hold my breath for? And the breath's like, I'm waiting to bust out from the seams. Good luck after a couple of minutes, if you're able to do a couple of minutes outside of being a deep sea diver. And even that, they've had to learn the craft of how to compartmentalize their airs, the airways anyway.
You bring
So,
up a really interesting word that I think is a key. At least it was for me. I had forgotten because I had to be responsible very young in life. I forgot how to play. I was given my childhood. I had a beautiful childhood, but I had forgotten how to play.
mm-hmm.
I started working so young that life became about responsibilities. And I don't mind being responsible. I don't mind being accountable, not just for myself, but for other people as well, and to contribute to the health and welfare of others. But what happened is that became my everything, and I forgot how to play. And for me, hiking in the woods is play, making bread is play. As a kid, I used to love, I was a Tommy girl. I used to love going and putting my hands and feet in the mud. I still do, and and playing in the sand with just using my body and in involving my body in life. And most of the work I have ever done, even when required, because I was a professional driver for a while, even when it required my physical body, it was my mind that it demanded the most of. And tempering the emotions so that you could be of good public service to other people. Somebody comes and screams at you, you got to learn to temper your emotions and still show up diplomatically, calm the other person down so that you can be of service to them. So life demanded that I be this incredibly mental being.
Well, life doesn't demand it. We demand that of ourselves. Life exists with or without our presence.
Well,
but I know what you're
let
saying
me,
too.
yeah, let me rephrase that then. Work, work, work demanded that of me. And so in that, I had forgotten how to play. And it took me a long time to learn how to play again. But the moment I started, that's when I realized that all control, this need for me to control, just ceased. It completely just stopped, because what happens when you're playing? You're having fun. There's nothing to control.
Again, you kind of talked on all of them: mental, emotional, and physical. Sometimes the extremities of the physical, and also the other part where, when it comes to the mental part, where's the emotional part of all of that? This is where play comes in, where you could actually play with numbers. You could literally play with, responsibilities or duties. And there's that childlike presentation that, a character named Just Jesus, once you become like children again. Because for most children, I say all children, because some children have had it more tougher than others, where they never had an opportunity to explore that. But if they realize that as an adult, then lead by other people. Allow yourself to allow others to be the example. I see that with my mom. I get to play with her all the time. I joke with her all the time, because she says she never had a teenage years to explore. So I gave her what I know I'm aware of as a teenager. We have to help each other in the areas that we probably didn't have a chance to emphasize in. Hey, Dom.
Hello.
We are probably in some sort of hell. Hello. How you doing, Dom?
I'm good, and you guys? Yeah, I always say hello, but I'm not really sure what the etymology is of that word, actually. I don't like saying good morning, because what are we mourning every day when we wake up? I don't know, so I don't say that.
What's your intent behind it too, Dom? If you know it's just a word that you're using, I'll play with the word. When people talk about heaven and hell, as we say the word hello here, are we here? Or is it just the suit itself that's kind of depicted as hell? Don't know. We can speculate, and I like to speculate, so. It's like
Yeah,
something.
you can break down words a whole lot of ways phonetically.
Yes, you can. Very much so, especially when you're speaking it in an English language. So that's even a more challenging thing on top of it. And then if you factor in the sun and the moon, its location, that might even play a role in all of that. But the greetings, I get it from most people. That's just saying, "Hey, I'm in the room." Some guys will give you a little nod. "Hey, yo," I get it. It's just saying, "I'm here. Welcome." Even there's another word, welcome.
If I had to guess, the word good morning just reminds me of like the resurrection of Jesus, because the sun comes up from the night. So you had a good morning, and now it's rising again, just like Jesus. I don't know if that's right, but
It's words. I use the word good as interchangeable with the word spiritual. So somebody could say spiritual morning. Oh, okay. What about tomorrow's evil? It's fun to play with them, Dom. And I know you're good. You're good with it too. I appreciate that. And Judith, you are yourself too. It's usually when we do all these little subdirectories, oh, it's in the Black Law Dictionary, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, what's the blah, 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 Dom? It just means it's a different version of it. And then, of course, behind a lot of that is that person or individual is going to try to prove a point. I said, okay, time out. Let me go get some popcorn. Carry on. It goes back to what we were just sharing, me and Judith, about play. To me, that's play. A guy that turns around and says, Dominic, or a woman that says, I'm serious or silly. I said, I'm trying to be sincere, but if you want to play silly and serious, you go right ahead. I'll gladly hear you out. But I do say this, Judith, every so often, or Dom, as I'm hearing other people, I'm hoping that they're listening from within. Because it's not my responsibility for them to listen to that internal part. That's kind of like doing a math check. You listen inwards and say, okay, Dom, you're playing a game with yourself. I'm talking to this Dom, not the Dom that just showed up. I'm playing a game with myself. Yeah, I like to play games. I don't think I'm harming anybody. Now, the person said, but you're harming me. I said, are you sure you didn't set yourself up before you even got to meet me? Then we have to distinguish, did I pull out a gun? Do I got a knife behind myself? No, I'm not harming you that way. A person mentally might think they're getting harmed. I said, so you're being offended by words now. Okay, interesting. So how do I categorize that now? That's why people try to be mean to other people, because they know, or they probably don't have discernment, but they do know that would affect them if somebody was being harmful with words. I said, it doesn't affect me. And if it does, how does it serve you? Go ahead, Georgie.
My experience of words is it's more about the energy, the tone, and the intention behind the word, as opposed to the word itself a lot of times. Because people have said nice, seemingly nice things to me, but the connotation, the energy, the way that it was spoken is very indicating that it was not intended with kindness, even though they were kind words. A lot of times for me, I don't really listen to the words. I read between the words. I read between the lines. I listen to the energy, to the tonality. Because sometimes we can mask our thoughts and feelings by using the opposite word. So, as opposed to F off, oh, isn't that nice? Right? But it's the way the person says nice. Oh, you're so pretty. Really? Because everything about you is telling me that you don't think I am. Or, oh, you're such a smart person. Really? Because everything you're saying and that I'm feeling is not feeling like that. It's feeling a little condescending. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So words are just, yeah.
I was going to say quickly, Jude, that's where we can use pattern recognition. There's a part of us that knows that we can pick up things. I'm like, that person's not being consistent. Are they counting on me not to be the type of person that actually literally hears you? I've said to jokingly years ago, I'm like, am I the only one that's actually hearing all of this? Like, are you hearing what you're saying? It's like when somebody says the word, you were using it earlier, control. I'm like, okay, so it would be challenging then, because we say things where we're at, hence the word understand. So when somebody says to me, Dominic, I'm making money, I'm like, time out. I kind of like learning about how to print money. So you're making money? No, you know what I mean? I said, no, I heard you. You're saying you were making money. There's a difference between making money and earning money. Now they might turn and say, well, Dom, you're too much into the details. Yeah, I like details. You're talking to a person, I like details. I'm not the kind of person that's going to give you a reward by saying I agree or disagree with you. That's not my style. This is where we respect each other by finding out the patterns. And it's not just about, I know this type of person. You should be able to get a gist of most people and say, And you know how you do that? You know thyself first. There's many ways to pick up on each other and realize, oh, that's interesting what he's saying. I wonder why he's saying it now. The why is a philosophy question. And yeah, tonality plays a role in it. You can pick up on somebody how they say something, and then if you understand the language, how it was spoken before, that's nice. Is he insulting me? He just said the word nice. It's like somebody saying the word gay. I can quickly transfer that word into my head. I'm like, is he trying to say I'm happy? I could push back and ask for clarity, but I would realize by picking up the energy, no, he's trying to insult me. Really. But who's he really insulting? Himself, because a gift that does not get received goes back to the one that was giving it. Now, they might ignore the energy. I'm like, okay, well, you got to question why you have to justify the way you speak. I do that myself. I know that about myself. This is the part where a lot of folks, whether they're aware of it or not, they ignore the spiritual aspect of it. They will constantly feed the sensories and the material. But they'll ignore more times than not. They'll say it in words only, spirituality. They'll say the word God in vain. That's why when I hear people say the word damning God, I'm like, if you're an atheist, that word shouldn't be coming out of your mouth. And if you're a Christian or a religious person, that word shouldn't be coming out of your mouth. It's usually ignorant people that say those words. And the fact that they'll even put that in a movie, that tells me they're aware of something that most people aren't aware.
Ignorant is a good word for that, because I know that when I've heard people speak those words together, it's usually an emotional response. It's not coming from a place of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Like we do parrot words, no offense to the poor parrot, but we do parrot these words, but we never go inwards and say, I wonder why I said that. Why again? There's another philosophy question. Why? Why would you say that out loud? Because we should be able to capture things in thoughts. But what we end up doing more times than not is react, opposed to, like you were saying earlier, to be accountable, you would have to learn how to be responsible to what I say, how I say it. And if somebody says, Dom, I don't like the way you're pronouncing the word, or you pronounce it, okay, how would you say it? Okay, we'll go with that. Do I need to say it out loud too? A lot of times we don't have to embody, well, actually we should embody each other, but we shouldn't always have to practice because somebody else says it one way and another person said. I might ask questions. I'm entitled to ask questions. It's the whole concept of questioning things. I will question things. I will question words. If I'm truly going to question another person, I would have to get to know them first. Who are you? What do you stand for? What was your upbringing like? Those would be a lot of questions and would be better suited privately. But that's challenging for a lot of folks.
Coming back to our conversation about, I'm not sure if really silence, that's the word you used. I think it's just more presence.
Mm-hmm.
I, like many people, tend to enjoy my own company because I'm never alone when I'm alone. And I've also spent years in my earlier years in therapy. And what I recognized is that when there's a lot of noise going on in the head, to speak out loud in the presence of your own self, whether you have a witness, such as a therapist or someone, a friend, a neighbor, a loved one, or even today here with two other people, to hear yourself speak, I think is fundamentally important to actually hearing the stories in your head. Hearing the stories in your head is the first step. It's not the destination. Hearing the stories and then asking the stories questions is the next step. It's still not the destination. I think because you had put about a link up about the seven, something to do with the seven aspects of spirituality. I think the road to presence, there's many steps to that silence, to the presence.
Or you're leading yourself with the word think. No different. You might interchange it with the word feel, or do you see it? That
Well,
inner. Go ahead.
Sometimes they're combined, right?
Could be. But sometimes we have one leading over the other, and it might serve at that moment. You know, of course, for a lot of people, they say the word they're never lonely because if they're literally communicating from within, why would you're never lonely? You might be alone, you know, in the sense that you could be in a whole area of people, but yet nobody there's really engaging with each other.
Interesting you bring that up because if I'm not mistaken, the other Dom that's on the channel right now,
Yes.
maybe it wasn't you, but I remember a conversation. Someone was saying that they find it hard to be around other people. And what I discovered, because I've gone through bouts of that, what I discovered is that often occurred when I had the most noise in my head. And I've discovered that when things are quiet, and I'm not just talking about thoughts, sometimes it's emotions, sometimes it's just energy, our own physical energy. I have found that, and I'll use the word peace to represent the absence of excessive energy, the absence of excessive emotions, the absence of excessive thoughts. The more I'm at peace, the more I can be present with other people, the more I can be present with the noise of life. Because the noise within me, and that again is the static noise of energy and emotions, the more that I'm at peace with all that, external noise is actually quite welcoming.
Well, you can have external silence, but the peace that a person is usually missing when they can't be with others is within. You know, like if you can endure your own words or your own habits, others might permit themselves to tolerate it or allow it, might even accept it. But the one that has to constantly be tolerating, accepting, or allowing is the one that's within you. You know, or whoever you think you are. You know, so sometimes when we're not in good, we don't want to be in companies of others. What is that really saying about ourselves? Now, that might be that person's plight in life. You know, we do need those people that are going to be hermits. You know, and it's occasionally when we meet them, you know, it's kind of like a presence of a unicorn. Okay, that's nice. And if a person's more of an extrovert opposed to an introvert, you can appreciate that aspect that they choose to lead with or her lead with. You know, not all animals that look very similar to each other are designed the same way. So why would humans be any different? It's respecting each other for where we're at, and that's usually an indication how one respects oneself. It always starts with the self. But for a lot of us, we either forget those things, we go with the pack, which is fine. If we were wolves, yeah, okay, I'd go with the pack. But even that, they probably all respect each other, saying, yes, you're the leader, but you need us as much as we need you. It's a statement that people say, you know, I like to be alone. Okay. What does that entail?
It's interesting because I'm naturally inverted, but I have been taught from an early age to be an extrovert. You know, that starting at school, your participation is required, or I don't know how they do it today, but when we were growing up, you actually got a mark for participation.
Yes.
So
And
if
then
you
that,
so if you didn't participate, you failed.
sometimes it's a selfish act. Participating is to aid others, because it was never taught in words, to participate with others that are going to be the ones that are going to lead and being the participator. They still do need to see others. But for a lot of us, we've been taught it's all about me, which is fine. It's always going to be about you first and foremost. You're the only one that's living in that suit. I'm not living in Dom's suit. I'm not living in your suit. Those words that we use, those have to be entrained to us, because I don't own those things either. So when we get to intermix with other people get to flourish. It's like when I speak out loud, I know it's for me. But there will be other people, whether here or it's recorded, other people might benefit from it. And hopefully at the same time, I kind of encourage this with books, we should be able to burn those books. If you got the message, move on with it, unless you feel as though you're going to pass it forward or pass it on to somebody else. But unfortunately, we have to remember anything that's been photocopied, it could have the temptation of becoming less. This is why when we have thoughts and then we bring it into a spoken language, there's sounds and frequency. Once we start going from there and then, well, they're mortal beings now, so let's put it in a written form. I said, we're even going down into another photocopy version. Then when you start putting that monkey brain to that information, it goes everywhere now. Well, this is how it was written. Okay, the word gives it away. How it was written. How was it inspired through thoughts? Well, I don't know. I said, well, maybe you should go back there then. At that point, you would have to go back into a state of meditation, listening, and say, well, that's not the way it's written. I said, of course it's not written that way. You put humans to that. What do you think you're going to get? It's the same human race that much as I joke about it, are they the ones that are creating Wi-Fi? I don't think so. Are they the ones that created the sun? I don't think so. I'm using the word thinking now because I'm using my upper brain. It's like when I hear people, well, there's no reason to it. What happened if it's beyond reason? These are words that we can entertain. And can people entertain many different words or just opposing sides? Because a lot of people just oppose either or. Give them zeros and ones, give them black and white. I said, well, what about all the other shades and colors? What about all the other numbers?
Coming back to participation, Don.
Please go ahead.
What I learned early is that I needed to participate in other people's lives. I had to participate for other people. As an introvert, that is not externally, that's not how I'm wired. In that learning, I had to unlearn how to participate in my own life first. Because my own life, internally, innately, I listen to thoughts, I examine the thoughts that are floating around in my consciousness that I'm hearing, in the stories that are going on in my head. I don't know if they're really going on in my head, but that's just a reference point. So it took me out of that. And in taking me out of that, when I wanted to go back into that, I observed that people called me selfish, self-centered, self-absorbed, because I was no longer participating in their life for them. That caused me a lot of conflict because I did not find the balance between me and them when I was only in them. And so coming back to, because we're talking about silence and stillness and presence, the whole point of meditation, coming back to yourself. And once you come back to yourself, then being present in the world with and for others as well. I learned early in life that it was coming back to what you're saying, either or. It was an either or. I had to sacrifice myself for others, or I had to completely cut off from others. And I've done this throughout my life. I've vacillated back and forth between being out in the world and then being in with, self-isolating. And the process of balance has been a lifelong journey.
Oh,
I know you talk a lot about spirituality, and I think I've shared with you, for me, every moment of every day is an opportunity to be spirit embodied.
Very true. This is a no-brainer.
I cannot dismiss even the most subtlest things, such as participating in a classroom or not, and the impact that has on me in daily life, in my peace, in my conflict, in my whatever I'm experiencing. And then how I show up in the world, because tell me that I'm not adding to conflict when I'm self-isolating. Tell me that I'm not contributing to conflict when I'm out. And because I have this internal conflict and I don't want to be out, maybe in this moment I want to be in. So maybe I'm, a bit snarky, or maybe just people are feeling my vibe and it's making them uncomfortable. So now I've created conflict outside of myself, not
Well,
intentionally. That was never my intention, but that's the product.
again, it's one of those things, Jude, where for a lot of people they're stuck in the evil aspect, the material part. They put way too much emphasis on that in exchange of giving up, and they ignore the constant thing that's always there, which is spirituality. Topics could be endless when it comes to spirituality, but for a lot of people, it's the constant drama of my body's doing this is what I should be doing. An introvert, extrovert, both of them can be very selfish. It's when you go inwards and then start communicating with something inside and say, I've been here the whole time. Did you want me to learn a language now too? That's where a person starts learning meditation and realizing, yeah, you've been preset internally. You're an introvert, so why aren't you communicating with me? And then eventually you're going to realize, as much as you're an introvert, you're an extrovert. No different if you're a follower, you're also a leader. But this divide and conquer stuff that people do to themselves on a regular basis and then wonder for some other sort of result is insanity.
I think it's just showing our imbalances.
Yes, and you strive for balance. For me, I just go from my zeros to ones back and forth, and I see all the other numbers while I'm playing those zeros and ones because I got to stay grounded in this form. I realize that if I want to succeed physically, financially, I have to play one more than the other, even though I know the other one's constantly there. Philosophy is all things. It's the whys. You want to understand science? Better be prepared to know philosophy is going to be in there. You know, the wisdom to grasp things, to have discernment of these things. Discernment, the word mint gives it away. We say so many words, they're like breadcrumbs. After a while, they become tree stumps, trees that are falling down. I said, I'm trying to give you a subtle hint. But it doesn't seem to work because you're so caught up in the evil aspect. You want to read another book. You want to make sure that some other country is doing whatever. And meanwhile, only because you have this technology that most people wouldn't even know how it even came to be. Those are the distractions that I say it's noise. The fact that I have to use my own noise to describe it is like, interesting. And I'm being polite when I say it's interesting.
I'm going to share that as something I've observed getting older. Read as many books as you can when you're younger because your eyesight begins to fail as you get older.
Sure, you can.
Just
but
trying to lighten up the mood here.
Yeah, but are you really lightening up the mood, or you just sort of shift it? But again, you could be looking at trees all the time if you want at that point. You know, I get it. Reading books, if you've been trained or taught, what are you trying to pick up? You know, trying to tell somebody, okay, when you're reading a book, keep in mind the hemispheres, how they work. When you read the right-hand page of the book, it's going to do something different opposed to the left. The fact that you're reading from top to bottom and bottom to top, that stuff is not shared with people. So we'll skip all of those things and then just teach you the alphabets. There you go. We'll teach you a simple alphabet. I don't care which one it is, a simple alphabet. And we're not even going to tell you why there's curvature around certain ones. By the way, we're not going to teach you how to do what the Asians or how they write. So at that point, that's more divide and conquer. But I get where you're coming from. As we get older, as I hear you say that, are we getting older or is the suit getting older? That's the question.
Suit is.
Yeah. So at that point, we're saying an erroneous thing by saying, I'm not getting older, the suit is. I'm using a discernment at that moment. Now, I could be full of crap, no different. I could say, listen, there's a Wi-Fi there. How do you know that's Wi-Fi? There's air over there. How do you know there's air over there? These are questions. I'm not saying I have answers, but it should shake people out of that tree and say, listen, get down here with the rest of us. Let's play. Let's have some fun. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dom. As someone I was a bookworm for many, many years of my life. I was not concerned about left to right or up or down or any of that. Although I eventually did go there.
Of course you did.
When I was reading, a lot of times I found myself gravitating to, well, my nature is I like self-help and I like documentaries that talk about other people in their life. In other words, relating. Everything's about relating for me. How does this conversation relate to what I'm experiencing right now? How does this story that someone is sharing relate to what I'm experiencing right now? So for me, it was always it was a tool. So even though on the outside someone could say, oh, look at her, she's wasting her time reading a stupid book, it had value in my life, on my journey, on my spiritual journey, on my healing journey, mind, body, emotion. And that journey is what allowed me then to go into things such as reading from left to right, because I studied Hebrew for a while, and learning other languages and learning hieroglyphs and things like that. It allowed it tended to those things, so that it almost reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It took care of a need so that I could move up the pyramid, or the ladder, into a different consciousness.
Well, even when I heard you and you had experiment writing with your left hand opposed to your right hand, what that does.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a lot of people don't practice these things and not realizing, why are people capable? They have to almost be restricted by not having hands to start learning how to play something with their feet. Again, this is the limitation of being in these suits, unless we're going to contribute to each other and then find out certain people have that ability. We don't all have to have those abilities. But it's nice to know, because if that was the case, that we all have to have the ability, then okay, then everybody should be able to run 100 meters under 10 seconds. Everybody should be able to see through an eye of a hawk. Again, these are fun things to obtain when you have it, and hopefully the community or whoever you're hanging around can at least respect those abilities, opposed to downplaying it. Oh, that's not that important. Really, it's not that important. Interesting. Again, if we're going to be somewhat of a collective species, we should at least try to act accordingly. But we don't. This is why spirituality is probably very important, because it sounds like most people are even ignoring the bits and parts when it comes to the material part. But yet they'll say quotes like mind over matter. Okay, the reason why it's over is not because it's controlling, because it's literally above us.
When you talk about collective, are you able to receive collective with conflict?
It's a good question, Jude. With conflict. I'm probably usually in conflict with myself, so if it was going to be collective, it would probably be coming through that aspect, yes. Yourself?
I actually welcome conflict, because that's part of the challenge. That's part of the spiritual. It's like I used to have these groups here, spirit groups, and I had a lady that her meditation teacher told her that anger is something that she needed to get rid of. And I said, what if it's a spiritual tool? So what if conflict is a spiritual tool? What if the external conflicts of the world are a spiritual tool for conflict that I myself am having, but maybe I'm not yet aware of it? It's there, but I'm not recognizing it. I'm not making the pattern recognition and the connections.
Yeah, because sometimes pattern recognition, there's the external pattern recognition, but then there's that internal pattern recognition. This is why when we listen inside, it's kind of like the conscious versus the subconscious. We give depictions such as, you got the iceberg, you got the 10%, we'll call that your conscious state, but then you got the 90% under the water. And why under the water? Because it's about emotions. You have to actually develop that emotion to tap into it. Most people will take a quick, oh yeah, I'm really excited in the conscious state. And then you'll hear people say, oh, you're in your feeler. Like, you're not in your feelers? I thought we're always in our feelers. Didn't you get sad when your hockey team didn't win? Well, yeah. I said, you're in your feelers. But this is how people download it, because they do more divide and conquer. They say, well, that's a woman thing. I said, there we go again. It's one species, but you figure just because one reproduces and the other one doesn't, that we're different? The collectiveness, Judith, it's here. We are the collective. But there's a lot of this divide and conquer, which I think it's an illusion, but we got to at least entertain it. Religion is about divide and conquer. State is about divide and conquer. Science is all about divide and conquer. Even the currency that we use, in this case, the fiat currency, is about divide and conquer. But then the question would be, what are they conquering? The fact that, you said it earlier, I've heard people say, I'm 40 years old, I'm 60 years old. There's a divide and conquer. The person literally thinks or feels that they're 60 years old. Okay, so How can we examine that?
Goes back to the conversation I had with your mom when she said, when are you going to act your age? And I said, well, what is 60 supposed to be?
Exactly.
Because yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, sorry, my apologies.
No. Continue.
I was going to say what we do use the word act. It gives it away. When are you going to act your age? Okay, we're all actors then, I guess, in the world of Sage. And then people use words like reality. Well, what is reality? There's air. Is it? Where's air? I don't know. We have thoughts. Where are thoughts? I don't know. So then what is reality? It goes back to, again, most people will spend an enormous amount of energy maintaining those plates of their sensories and then read in the biblical story, oh, humans always lean towards evil. Of course they do. They always lean towards the material aspect, hence the word evil.
I think it's interesting and I'm just using your mom as an example because your mom represents all of us at some point in our life. When we think that something should be, we deny the possibility of what it could be. So what could 60 be? What could 80 be? I remember your dad saying he reached 80. He's old now. And I'm like, my grandfather was 99. He never felt old. He didn't think of himself as old. So because I should be old at 80, well, what could be possible if you were to just put that, not ignore it, but put that aside and say what else is possible at 80?
Of course, there's some validity to saying that the vessel has reached a certain plateau or a certain point. The vessel is 80 years old. And with pattern recognition, you could look at a lot of people that are 80 years old and you can see some similarities. Now, somebody could turn around and say, okay, but I'm 80 years old and I'm still running all this, but you're not the norm at that point, patterns. So, but again, a lot of us become attached to those things. I'm 80 years old. Okay, so the I am and then whatever, you're 80 years old, so therefore you're the thoughts too?
I am is a commandment.
It is, the I am, but after that there's a persona. The I am and then fill in the blank. I am an electrician, I'm a plumber, I'm a male, I'm a female. Those are personas. That's not who we are. Now, for some person or some people to say, I'm not interested. Well, then why are you having these kind of engagement with people that are seeking, wisdom or philosophy? If that, and then there's other people, they want to judge us. So then why are you here? It's a question. Why are you here? Not just why you're in the group. Why are you in that meat suit or that temple, whatever you want to call it? Why are you there? I just showed up. Oh, okay. But yet they want to understand, or at least, badger other people that are trillionaires or rich people. I'm like, what about if you found out those people are constantly aware of their spiritual aspect? And most of us have just forgotten those things or have abandoned it or just ignored it. But yet technology keeps on going with those folks, and most of us are just plugging and playing. It'd be different if anybody here said, listen, I'm participating in producing Wi-Fi. I'm the one that's actually producing all the fiat currency. No, most of us are plugging and playing. We don't know how most of this technology's come to be.
The question, why am I here? I think for me was one of the worst questions I ever asked myself.
How dare you do that to yourself?
And the reason being is because it demanded an answer that I felt I had to manifest. And it actually kind of it was a distraction in many ways.
But as a child, that you have that playful ideal or that playful emotions, they would embrace that question. Why are you kids playing over there? Oh, we're having fun. Okay, kids, make sure you guys don't go over the bridge. Hey, thanks for telling me what we're going to be doing next.
I think the question why has its place in society, and in our spiritual development. But to put it as a purpose, a reason, to begin with, everything that is, I give meaning to. I'm the one that decides what is valuable and not valuable in my life. I'm the one that decides everything about my life. So if I now have to decide why I'm here, what if what I manifest is not the real reason I'm here?
True. But yet people will say words like, I question everything. I said, somebody just openly admit that they really don't want to question those things. And it is meaningful because we're using a language that favors that. It's not like as though if me and you were speaking Greek, Jude, it would be more of a comprehension. Why are we trying to comprehend this? Or
Well,
let's say,
and it goes back, sorry, hon, and it goes back to participation then. Now I'm forced to participate in something that may not be true for me.
maybe true, but we're not, in this case, I'll use an example. We're not pulling you out of the forest because you've been a hermit. No, you are participating. Whether you have a computer, a cell phone, a stove, a fridge, you are participating. The whole time you're participating. Driving a car. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to clarify that. Participating in the sense that if I am presence, that is an energy that I am in the consciousness, in the collective, and in my individual consciousness. Sometimes simply stepping into yourself out of external conflict, there's a cessation to the adding unto the conflict that can literally mitigate the conflict itself, including the one that's internal.
Thanks for bringing that around, you, because I lean more towards the material aspect, and you brought it back to the spiritual. I appreciate that, because really, you could not participate in the spiritual aspect, but yet on a material level, we're always participating, whether we want to admit it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's challenging for the people that try to pursue these things. Some people, I use the word rude awakening. They get a rude awakening, like, I never realized, I never thought of those things. Where was I before?
Rude awakenings, by the way.
What's that, Jude? Say it again.
I said I love rude awakenings.
Yeah, well, you embrace it then. You're a little bit kinky that way. And I'm using the word kinky in a spiritual sense. And I'll have to put it in. When I found out what the word kinky actually meant on a spiritual sense, it was quite revealing, actually. I'll look it up, actually.
My interpretation of a kink, regardless of whether it's spiritual or not, is that there's a ceasing of a flow, a temporary ceasing, or it could even be a permanent ceasing of a flow. And sometimes that's what's needed in spirituality. If I have a train of thoughts that are self harming, and consequently, everything that I am and I show up as in the world is going to have an effect on everyone around me. If I'm self harming and I go out into society, well, then I'm having that impact in society. That's what I'm contributing. Having a kink in that, being kinky, could be a positive tool because it's a cessation. Again, it goes back to I'm going to step inward as opposed to being outward. I'm going to retract so that I'm not contributing, I'm not adding more gas to the fire. I'm going to go within to where the blaze really exists within me. I'm going to tend to the fire within me. And then when I come out, if I'm just this warm ember, well, that's going to have a different effect in society than being someone that's tossing gasoline. That said, sometimes a good fire is necessary. Controlled burns, right, in the forest. I guess it comes down to the discernment of the fire itself. I don't typically throw out fire, but when I do, I'm very strategic with it. Oh, where were we? Sacred path of self-awareness, deep surrendered and altered states of consciousness.
Yeah, again, it's kind of like how we use words, and I think chakras kind of reveal a little bit. When somebody says the word gay opposed to happy, opposed to some sexual connotation, when people think of the word kinky or kink, they think it more from a lower aspect or in that gut area, actually, in the sacred area opposed to on a higher level. There's a lot of transformation going on. For a lot of us, a lot of transformation or transmutation. The word mute gives it away. We put words inside of some of these words to leave us little crumbs. Now, some people might just think this is a hogwash or whatever. I said, that's fine. This is not for you. Not everybody wants to participate with cell phones. Not everybody wants to participate owning a vehicle. That's kind of a given if people use, pattern recognition. Again, it goes back to respecting each other. Respect for me just means to hear each other out. When somebody says, I agree or disagree, I say, well, that's your ego talking at that point. Do we really need each other's approval? It's a question, and some people might say yes. I need to make sure that, my mother or my dad or my loved ones, approve of my decision. Okay, but are you secure with yourself if you don't receive it? Let alone when you do receive it.
I have often discovered that respect also comes with lack of respect. And I guess this comes to a word that kept coming up to me in the very beginning before I even came onto the panel, and that was about territory or boundaries, which are essential in one's spiritual development and growth. When I surrender my boundaries because I'm trying to respect someone else's wishes that is contrary to how I would prefer to be in the moment, I have to sacrifice some part and of my authenticity. And when that happens, that's going to create a tension, a creative tension, because I think that's all conflict, regardless of what the nature of the conflict, whether it's political, geopolitical, societal, or whether it's just me in my own life. All conflict is creative. It's an opportunity. It's essentially, it's chaos. It puts things into a disarray, and it's an opportunity to examine this whole concept of what you're saying, Dom, respect and lack of respect, to respect you at the cost of not respecting myself. And again, it's about imbalance. Well, the balance is, how do I respect you and me in this moment? Sometimes that's just a matter of, instead of changing my behavior, it's a beautiful, gentle conversation that's void of anger and frustration and irritation and all the emotions that this inner fire conflict is causing within me, that then gets me to speak in a way that maybe I don't want to speak, because beneath the harshness that I'm speaking is a truth, but I haven't yet figured out how to speak it without all the harshness.
Well, there is truth. I don't know, truth. There is patterns to it. So when a person takes accountability for themselves, I was angry. Okay. Is that what you want to give and receive from others? If a person can say with all honesty, no or yes, then act accordingly. Again, there's no harm per se in being angry with yourself. Now if a person wants to perceive it as harm, all the power to you. No different if there's no joy in it. It can be. Treat others the way you want to treat, or maybe treat others better than the way you'd want to treat yourself. Now, if you're going to be a really mean person, then treat people accordingly. But give them at least a heads up. Because eventually they're going to, or at least they're going to show, if you respect patterns, they're going to say, listen, I'm not interested. This is where a person...
That falls short, Tom, where I think that falls short, I grew up in an environment where anger was the emotion. It was completely acceptable.
Yes.
And it wasn't just anger, it was the way that anger was expressed. You said something, I can give you every nasty name, I can punch you, I can kick you, I can do whatever I want to, because that's the expression of anger. That's one way to express it. But if I stop and I come back in and I say, do I like the effects? Some people do. That's when you're a sadist masochist, right?
But then they're reacting, Jude. If they were being honest with themselves and said, "Listen, do you do that? Do you do that to yourself?" And if they say yes, I said, "Okay, so do I have a say in the matter?" And then they might turn around and say, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Did you feel as though you had a say in the matter?" This is when we start sharing with each other's. Now we might be talking from we're being in our the vessel's 60 years old, but the ones that pick it up at a younger age, that is where we have communication. Now other people might turn around and say, "You know something? I'm kinky that way, and I'm going to use it in a lower sense." Okay, well do that privately then. We're becoming a society where we should have to either accept, tolerate, or allow other people's behavior without being able to question it.
Coming back to anger, though, Don,
Let's go.
that's where anger is the tool. That's where anger becomes the tool. Like, let's look outside at society right now. Nobody recognizes the world. Everybody's the anger levels are like up to the sky at this point. But anger is a tool. This is what I learned, having grown up in anger and violence and all that. Anger is just a tool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm either continuing, because I was someone that did self-harm as a result. This was the beginning of my journey. I didn't want to be that person that harmed others. So I would harm myself purposely by compromising my boundaries, by people pleasing, by literally physically self-harming myself, just so whether that was through substance abuse or through too much exercise, too much diet, whatever. I would harm myself so that I would not harm others. That was the beginning of my journey. And in that, the next, this is why I'm saying about it's the next step. It's not going up a ladder, it's just the next step. The next step was, wow, I don't like how I'm treating myself now. I'm okay with the fact that I'm not hurting others, but I don't like the fact that I'm hurting myself now. Because what I discovered is when I became aware that I was hurting myself, well, that just gave me even more anger at other people. It's because you're the reason that I'm doing this. No, Jude, you're the reason, always.
Again, Jude, not to downplay it, it is energy and motion. And the ones that are usually angry don't have the guidance of other people that actually have other different type of emotions, so they can at least say, "Listen, there is joy moments out there." It takes a person that's really angry to have to go through all the tripping over themselves and then meeting other people that survive all of that. There that becomes their leaders. Where are the people that are going to share? There's other ways how to perceive energy. Now, I get it where you're coming from, and I would say there's a good chance there was a lot of ignorant people in your community. The ones that were leading probably shouldn't have been leading, because a lot of people that usually are over joyful or over anger are usually underdeveloped still. And that's why they're over. Go ahead, Jude.
I'm going to change that word. It was a culture.
It could be. It could have been.
It was just like it is today. There's a culture of anger. Everybody feels entitled to be angry, to go and slap strangers, to go and just be the worst that they can be in society. We're entitled to that anger now. We have all sorts of justifications and reasons for it.
And there's reason again, because we use justification opposed to doing a little pushback. Are you angry because you're self-righteous? Are you angry because there's injustice going on? And if we're talking about injustice, are we talking about the spiritual realm, or are we talking about commerce in the courts? So again, Jude, this is where most children not most, my apologies, most children get to just play. But the ones that don't, eventually they're the ones that are wounded. They're the lions with the thorn in their hands, and either it will fall off by itself through tough experience, because life always is the equalizer, meaning that as long as you're still here, you're breathing, you're in life. You're not here anymore, maybe next time. So at that point, where are the leaders that are trying to encourage balance? I don't think people that...
On that note, I'm going to bring it full circle.
Please.
Coming into peace. As opposed to putting all my anger outward. And instead of taking it inward and using it as a weapon against myself, simply to just sit in that anger and start asking questions.
Yes. You do ask questions,
Because,
and you.
sorry, because there are a lot of people out there that don't that aren't contributing to the anger, but you know what? You don't see them because they're peacefully living their lives. They're not
So,
trying to be showy. They're not trying to be out in the world and adding unto it. You need to look for the person that's sitting by a river.
Jude, we're talking about ignorance now at that point. Again, there's a lot of people out there that give you a dysfunctional interpretation that I'm messed up inside of my head, but I don't talk openly, even though I lived a half decent life, supposedly, and vice versa. You see the extremities. Now, at that point, a person that goes into peace, silence, then they can go inwards and say, none of that, or not, most of it doesn't belong to you. This
But
is
I
where people,
hear
go
what
ahead.
you're saying, but you're talking, I hear what you're saying. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the outcome. I'm talking about the process to get there.
I get it, Jude. You are talking about the process, but I'm still a voice. Like everybody else is a voice. Now it's up to them to listen. Do I have to experience it externally with the patterns, or can I go inwards and say, listen, do you think you really need to put your hands on the stove? Do you really think you need that element? Now for you, you appreciate and embrace fire. Not everybody's fire, Jude. There's people that are air. There's other people that are water. So their emotions are going to lead a little bit differently than others. This is how we assist each other by just putting it out there. What people do with it, that's on them. The person that's angry and then acts it out, we could hold them, give them a hug if they'll even accept it. Because we're not just going to always coddle the children that's being affected by it. It's everybody that's involved.
Have you ever
We're
noticed how air triggers fire?
air triggers fire. Okay.
Yeah, somebody says something to you and you get triggered.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everything has its purpose.
Yeah, it sure does. I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Jude. It all has its purpose, and that's why when we go inwards, something can either make sense of it if that's important, make reason of it if that's important. But for a lot of us, we're trying to live, ignore the darkness within us to look outside and think that the answer's out there. I said, no, those are the effects. The cause is probably some within, or we received it from within. You know, we are receivers and perceivers, so therefore I can take information from the outside world, in this case the physical world, or from the spiritual world. Now a lot of people don't put value to those things. I said, okay, so you're ignoring it or you know for sure? Which one is it? And for a lot of people, they don't know for sure, so you're ignoring it then. And even that, it could be something else. I'm just giving two words. It could be any, I'm too busy, Dom. Oh, okay, you're too busy. But yet you have enough energy to keep fueling that thing. Positive or negative. If you, and even that's an erroneous statement too. Positive and negative, meaning that what once we ignore, the other one we do. Well, then how does the car battery work? You know, this is the concept of. I might call it simple, and I might be degrading it, but yin and yang. Everything has a cycle to it. You're sharing some of your personal experience, which I appreciate, and I'm pretty sure other people can appreciate it. But there's other people there who say, listen, I've never experienced war the way you perceive it, but I have experienced an internal war. What do you mean? I've been fighting with myself, and it's a fruitless effort, opposed to embracing it. Hence why people say the word control. It's an illusion at best. And it might serve them. And then they'll look for other people to justify it. And I see they're just like me. I'm like, okay, let's go with that. Exactly like you? Or they're playing parts like you.
Something I've learned is that if I'm not seeing light in the world, then it must mean that I am the light.
Mm-hmm.
So who and what am I being, doing, having, knowing, receiving, and perceiving as light in the world? Am I, a conflagration of fire that's burning everything, or am I that warm ember? What kind of light am I?
And what I know of you, Jude, you'll take accountability whatever direction you go. But for a lot of people, they like to hear words like the word free, for example. It's another way of saying I'm not accountable. I have freedom of speech. Okay, good, go with that. I have free will. Yeah, you go with that. You have to have effort in everything you do. And the Spirit will remind you of that. You know, as we're breathing it. Go ahead, Georgie.
Hence conflict.
Yes, we do have conflict, but the conflict is not coming from the Spirit. It's coming from that monkey brain, that ego. It's in conflict. It's preset for survive, fight or flight, and that's where people have these deaths, as they call them. I have to have
I
the
think
death
it's
of.
both.
Go ahead. You.
I think it's both because to me, thoughts are spirit. So if I'm telling myself stories with thoughts and it's having an effect on my physical, that is the material spiritual journey.
It could be, if you want to perceive it that way, and if it serves you, all the power.
I don't know how long this is going to go for, but I think I'm going to thank you at this point for allowing me to come up.
I was going to shut it down soon, and it looks like Dom's already stepped off.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Judith. I
This
appreciate
was
it.
enjoyable.
It was always. Thanks, hon. Have a beautiful day, hon. Dom,
Thank you.
thank you very much. You were teaching the complete thing about silence. I appreciate it, Dom, and I hope if you have another posting coming up, you're doing another talk today, I will post it on the chat here later. Again, thanks, guys. Have a beautiful day, everybody that came.